This one is for MN Stash, who has great taste in supervillains. Marvel's New York is crawling with crime bosses, mate. The boisterous Kingpin of Crime, the Tommy gun-toting Hammerhead, the Owl, Mr. Negative, Silvermane, there's loads. Don Fortunato, remember him? His son was a proper loser. But in this sea of wise guys, no supervillain is as stylish as the Rose. A mystery beneath his gorgeous lilac mask, the Rose rose to prominence in the New York underworld under the employ of Wilson Fisk. But Rose had higher ambitions than to just be a henchman. Behind Fisk's back, he plotted to undermine and overthrow the ultimate crime lord. The Rose and his crew were some of Spider-Man's most recurring enemies through the prime of his career, the 80s. And it all starts right here in Amazing Spider-Man 253. Do you see all those guys Spidey's sorting out? That's the easy part, because it's gonna be murder when he faces the Rose. Spider-Man is fresh back home from the secret wars, and he's somewhat managed to get his life as Peter Parker back on track. He's on assignment from the Daily Bugle covering a football match, where he runs into a kid he used to teach at university, Tony Nesters. Tony's big brother Ray is a big football star, but he seems to be on a bit of a losing streak lately. And the reason for that is he's been taking dives for money. Ray has sold his honour and his sportsmanship to the man known only as the Rose. Nesters does still have a shred of self-respect though, because he tells the Rose's goons he's done fixing games. But the thugs won't let Ray out so easily. The Rose isn't done with him yet. But when the Rose's request comes through, Nesters defies the mystery man's demands. So the Rose decides to remind his men that he does have thorns. Ray's got an interview with Daily Bugle reporter Wendy Thornton and her photographer Peter Parker, but when he returns home, instead of his little brother, he finds a single rose. The malicious mafioso has kidnapped Tony. Ray speeds to the Rose's warehouse and crashes in, not noticing the black-suited stalker swinging after his speeding car. Despite his grandstanding display of rage, the Rose is unimpressed. He hasn't harmed Tony because he still needs Ray's cooperation for the game, but before the Rose can work out a deal, his men dive on the football star. Lucky for Ray Nesters, there's a spider in the Rose's garden. Either Rose's goons aren't from New York, or they're thrown off by Spidey's new costume because they don't recognise the web slinger even though he's got a big spider on his chest. And Spidey bounces from thug to thug, cutting them down like weeds. It's here that Spider-Man has his first man-to-man confrontation with the Rose. And he is a classy kind of crime lord. He doesn't wish to dirty his suit by stooping to Spider-Man's level, but his gas grenades are useless against the wall crawler's fancy new black suit. Ray catches up to the Rose before Spidey can, and curses our violet-masked villain for ruining his life. But Rose disagrees. He tells Ray that he is an adult and he made his own decisions. Nesters got himself into this mess. But if Ray wants the Rose to make a mess, he gets his wish, because the boss's grenade topples a wall of crates right onto the football star. Spider-Man does save Ray, who goes on to admit to his crimes, but the rambunctious Rose escapes. The Amazing Spider-Man issue 256 kicks off as Spider-Man and the Black Cat smash up a storage house for stolen goods belonging to, you guessed it, the Rose. Twice now, this 8-legged interloper has ruined Rose's plans, and that is 2 times too many. The Rose summons an assassin to squash Spider-Man, but not just any assassin. The Rose hires the Puma. The Honourable Puma does get close to killing our hero, but shockingly, Spider-Man is rescued by one of his greatest foes. Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin of Crime, orders his underling, the Rose, to call off the hit. Fisk has his own plans for Spider-Man, and like it or not, he is the Kingpin. Look at the rage beneath the Rose's mask. Rose has no choice but to follow Kingpin's orders because he is the #1 master criminal in America. For now. The Rose says himself it's suicide to defy the Kingpin. It'd be madness. But maybe a bit of madness is just what the Rose needs. Enter the Hobgoblin. This could be the start of a beautiful friendship if this is indeed the same Hobgoblin who's been terrorising New York and Spider-Man for months, and not just some imposter. Last we heard of the Hobgoblin, he had drowned fighting Spider-Man. Could this lunatic still live? Rose's test of the Goblin's mettle is passed with flying colours, and the Rose's new friends got a plan to checkmate the Kingpin and squash the Spider. Backed by the Rose, the Hobgoblin strikes out at Fisk's illegitimate gambling businesses, telling them they work for him now, and the Kingpin can go stuff himself. Ballsy move. But for a man as dangerous as the Hobgoblin, the thugs have no choice but to bend over. And this is just the start of Hobgoblin's plan. He informs the Rose of Step 2, an attack on Liz and Harry Osborn. Listen, as much as I love the Hobgoblin, I promise the focus of this is indeed the Rose, but I have to mention this part. In the time between, Peter had found out his new black suit was actually a living alien organism that tried to bond with him permanently. Spider-Man had the black suit removed by the Fantastic Four, and the reappearance of the Hobgoblin forces Spidey into action. Like that beautiful scene in Spider-Man 3, Peter makes his grand return to his classic costume, and it's as spectacular as ever. Masterpiece, mate, there's no beating this era of Spider-Man. The Rose acts all flowery to the Hobgoblin's face, but make no mistake, there is no honour among these thieves. As soon as the Goblin's played his part in the Rose's rise to power, Rose intends on clipping his new friend at the stem. But Spider-Man gets to the Goblin first. Hobby attacks Harry to steal his copies of Norman Osborn's Goblin journals, but the webhead holds Hobgoblin off long enough for Osborn Jr. to escape. Sorry, again, I need to show this part. The fight ends up in the ladies' room, where Spider-Man webs a pumpkin bomb to Hobgoblin's hand, so he has to dunk his hand in the toilet to put out the fuse. But, alas, Hobgoblin manages to escape again, and the Rose does play a part in this sinister scheme because his men kidnap the pregnant Liz Osborn and Mary Jane Watson. All part of the plan to force Harry into giving Goblin the diaries, but they seem to have triggered something inside Harry they didn't count on. Hobgoblin gets Norman's journal and adds Harry to his list of abductees in one of the Rose's warehouses. It's all smelling like roses for our deadly duo, but they don't know that their mutual enemy Spider-Man had been tailing Harry Osborn all day long, and now he's climbing up the Rose's water spout. Between Harry busting out the hostages and the web-slinger on the scene, Rose leaves the unpleasantness to his business partner and pulls out. Hobgoblin's gonna have to handle this one alone, and it goes about as well as you'd expect it to for him. Both the Rose and the Hobgoblin next appear weeks later in issue 275. Thanks to Rose's funding, Hobgoblin has upped his arsenal with a new computer-guided finger blaster. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube? A weapon even Spider-Man can't outrun. And here is our first hint at the true identity of the Rose. Bright blonde hair is visible underneath his violet mask, as the Rose reminds the Goblin they have fatter fish to fry than Spider-Man. Speaking of, the Kingpin knows all about the Rose's treachery, yet somehow the Kingpin hesitates to react. Even he doesn't know who the Rose truly is, but if he's who Fisk suspects, things will never be the same. Despite his fancy new weaponry, the spectacular Spider-Man outpaces the Hobgoblin, and for perhaps the final time, Spidey finally unmasks the Goblin, and he's shocked to find Flash Thompson. #1 Spidey fan and good friend to Peter Parker was the sinister Hobgoblin all along. That's what the real maniac would have us believe. It's a beautiful frame-up, but if Flash is taking the heat, the genuine article should lay low for a while. Either way, the Rose is now on his own again, only now he's made an enemy of the Kingpin of Crime. The Rose is a schemer, but he doesn't have to make many plans because solutions keep coming to him. With Hobgoblin underground, another maniac mercenary offers his services, the Jack-o'-lantern. Rose plans to have both high-flying freaks take each other down, but his plot's worked out by the Hobgoblin. Cracks begin to form in their faux friendship. The thing about Jack-o'-lantern, he's certainly no Hobgoblin. Jack busts Flash out of jail, believing him to truly be his new rival. But this jeopardizes the real Goblin's cover. The Rose's plan comes to fruition as Goblin must now face Jack in battle. A beautiful topiary of a trap. It's only a shame for the Rose that the fight ends in a stalemate. That's it. Enough skullduggery, enough schemes, enough games. The streets of New York are about to run rose red with blood. Starting an Amazing Spider-Man 284. It's gang war. The Kingpin's rivalry with Daredevil, the man without fear, has been born again. Only this time it sparked an all-out gang war beginning with Fisk's disappearance. The Rose, Hammerhead, Silvermane and the Arranger are all out to become the next Kingpin of Crime, and they've each got an army of goons to help them do it. It's gonna be a bloodbath. Hobgoblin is back in the game, and he and the Rose are ready to take the crown for themselves. But Rose still intends on offing the Goblin once his usefulness is ended. We do get a very eloquent look at the Rose here, alone at last, where he decides enough blood has been spilled. He needs to take a direct hand in how this gang war goes. The true threat is the Arranger, directing the remnants of Wilson Fisk's empire and going a bit power mad as he does it. He's already had his new hire, Jack-o'-lantern, attack Silvermane and planted a bomb that rocked Hammerhead. But before he can make a move against the Rose, he gets a visitor. Richard Fisk, the son of the Kingpin. Rose isn't alone in wanting an end to the war, as Hammerhead offers a deal. Rose lays down his arms and falls in under Hammerhead, and together they rule this city. Hammerhead can take the heat while the Rose sits back. One problem though, Rose thinks himself a higher class of criminal. His current business partners would scoff at the idea of Mr. H running the show. Rose needs to make his move to seize control soon, and the best way to do that might be without his trademark mask. Rose is clever, he weighs his options. He's heard Hammerhead's proposal, now he wants to hear what the Arranger can arrange. But their parley is interrupted first by the Punisher, and then by one of Hammerhead's inside men. Hammerhead's display of brutality leads to the Rose teaming up with the Arranger in an effort to stop this gang war for good. But you can't consort with evil and not expect to get infected yourself. Amazing Spider-Man 286 sees an end to the war, and perhaps to the Rose. The Rose's plan is finally revealed as he discusses the gang war with his girlfriend. All along, ever since he first appeared on the crime scene, the Rose has planned to undermine the Kingpin's empire to burn it from within. He would take Fisk's place and run things better than the Fat Man ever could. And now we finally get the reveal. The Rose isn't just some punk with delusions of grandeur. Crime is in his blood. Crime is his dynasty. The Rose is Richard Fisk, the son of the Kingpin. The sins of the father are being paid for by the son as he works to dismantle his dad's life's work. But Rose is a gentleman. He's a morally superior specimen, a schemer, not a brute. His master plans will end the gang war and make the streets safe again. The Rose is healing the city, not hurting it. But everything the Rose cultivated gets washed away in the rain when Spider-Man interrupts their surgical strike on a rival gang. Hobgoblin bails at the sight of Spidey, leaving the Rose to fend for himself. And when he's faced with failure, Richard proves the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Rather than surrender, the Rose murders an innocent young policeman. Now knowing he truly is his father's son, the Rose resigns himself to his bloody legacy. That was the original Rose saga, and Rose may be the greatest crime boss Spider-Man has ever faced. He was so meticulous, every plan was well thought out, with contingencies and backups ready just in case. He might actually be the smartest criminal Spidey's ever faced as well. Until the end, Rose ensured no innocent was ever harmed in his crimes, and he made sure he only told other criminals what to do, without committing any physical crimes himself. There was no real evidence against Richard. But the factor that makes the Rose stand out was his master plan. He's steeped himself into the criminal lifestyle with the end goal of eventually stopping it. Unlike other crime boss villains who just want power, respect or money, the Rose genuinely had good intentions. I did love the team up with Hobgoblin, mainly because Hobgoblin kicks ass, but every mastermind needs the muscle. And it was great how neither of them really truly trusted the other, leading to some tense situations. You never knew which one would backstab the other first. The Rose's life of crime does continue after this, but this is the turning point for our garden tendon genius. Never again does the Rose reach such heights of power or lows of disgrace. Rose and the Hobgoblin are absolutely the primary opponents of Spider-Man during his best years, and he certainly earned that privilege here.